Hello, everyone. I am your MC today. Marshall can't make it, so uh, um, yeah, you're stuck with me. So, anyways, I'm Mike Burgee. I'm the technical lead here at Mainspring. You've probably recognized me from all the other office hours I've presented, and um, this month's topic is a um, pretty fun one. I don't know maybe about fun, but it's a little bit more on the technical side. It's more for the developers in the room, but it's something that's a basic core competency of doing development in FileMaker, and that's using custom functions. And I'm going to leave it up to Jeff to explain this more. Jeff Drake is a senior developer here, and he's been doing FileMaker probably longer than I have, or at least as long as I've been doing it. So he's a good expert to talk about the project. Um, so hopefully he'll go into all the benefits of using custom functions and some example custom functions and the power behind it. And then if you have questions throughout this, you can use either the Teams Q&A feature or the Teams chat feature. I'll be monitoring both. Feel free to ask questions whenever you have them, and I'll either feed them to Jeff for you or talk about that. I might throw in some comments as well along the way. And yeah, we will go from there. So, Jeff, it's all yours.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. So, as Mike said, custom functions are a pretty cool thing. I've amassed a pretty big library of my own and some that I've pulled from online, and we'll talk about some of the places you can get custom functions if you don't have ones you've written yourself. But basically, the idea of custom functions is to allow you to do things easily and repeatably. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we are going to start with something that some of you may have seen. This is one of FileMaker's uh, sample files. When you open up FileMaker Pro for the first time, it allows you to create a new database from the sample files, and this one is their contacts. As you can see, I've pulled in 1,000 random contact persons and given them companies, and some of them have phone numbers, etc. So we'll have a little bit of data to play with here. But the basic idea is with a custom function, you can take something that you're going to do over and over and over again and make it as simple as drag and drop, copy and paste, however you want to do it. So let's talk about these contacts here. When this file is created, it includes fields like title and first name and last name, kind of things that you'd have in any contact database. Nothing really surprising here. But as most people know, you want to do something with this data. And a lot of times when you want to do something with the data, you're going to want to put this information together, the first name, the last name. If you want to add the title, you might want to add the title to it. So I'm going to create a calculation field here. And there are easier ways to do this, but for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to do this the way a lot of people would set up a field like this. So let's create a field here. We're going to call it full name, and it's going to be a calculation. So we'll create that, and we're going to say, I'll use the if function. Usually I use case, but we'll use if for simplicity. So if title is not blank, then we want to do title and the space. And if first name is not blank, we want to do first name and a space. And last name, we don't need another space there because obviously we don't want a space after last name. So when we click OK, I'm sorry, we need to make this text, almost forgot that. We'll come out into here, and I'm going to add that field to the layout so we can see what's in there. And it's not going to be a big surprise to anyone. We have the full name, just stick it up here where it's nice and ugly. And interestingly enough, oh, did I put equals instead of not equals? See, we all make mistakes. If it's not equal to blank, if it's not equal to blank. There we go, fix that. And now we've got the whole full name in there. But of course, every time you create a new database, you're going to have to do this calculation over and over and over again. So let's see if there's a simple way to automate this. Let's go back in here, and we're going to grab this calculation, copy it, and I'm going to go up to the File menu, Manage, Custom Functions. Now you'll see that I actually have a keyboard shortcut for this. This is something that I've added on my own machine. On macOS, you can add shortcuts to any menu item using the settings. But we'll go into Custom Functions, and you'll see it's pretty sparse in here. So let's go ahead and create a custom function. And we're going to call it full name. Now, I could put a space in there, but if I do that, it's going to yell at me when I try to put it into a calculation because it's harder to use. So let's just do this, and I'm going to give it some parameters. So these are like variables, basically. So we'll say title. I can type. Hit return. First name. And I really can't type today. And last name. And then I'm going to paste in this calculation. Now, if I click OK now, it's definitely going to yell at me. It says the specified parameter cannot be found because first name is not one of the parameters. I have to spell it exactly the same as I've got it up there. Capitalization doesn't matter, but we will put that in there. And now these are variables. So when I click OK, come back out into here, I can go back into my full name field, and instead of all this, I can just say full name. There's my function. And I'll put the title in there, and the first name there, and the last name there. Click OK, and we've got the same value. Again, this isn't a huge deal with something as simple as this, but the point is you can use it over and over and over again. So if, for example, I create another new database, let's say I want to do meetings. And I'll just stick that on my desktop to make it simple. I can go back into custom functions, and I can click import, go to contacts, and grab that full name calculation. And now it's a custom function in my meetings file that I can use here as well. And the nice thing about the custom function is that because it's in the actual file, when you deploy the system, everyone can use it. No matter who is logging in, it's just like any calculation field. It's going to give you all of that information. Now, let's say that we wanted to do a last name first field. Again, very common requirement. So let's go back into custom functions. I'm just going to use my keyboard shortcut. And let's say last first. And we'll do the same thing as before. We can put first name, last name. And now what we'll do is put the last name and if last name is not equal to blank, see, learn from my mistakes, then and first name is not equal to blank, I'm going to put a comma and a space, close the parenthesis, and then do and first name. So again, we can now use this anywhere we want. We'll go back into Manage Database, and we'll do full name last first, make it a calculation. And again, when we come over here, we have our custom functions. I can do a search for full name, or I just called that one last first, and I'll put first name in there, last name in there, make it text. And when we come out here, I'm going to just change this because we don't have a lot of room on this layout. And now you have last comma first, and you can use that over and over again. The cool thing about these custom functions is that they can get really complex. So what I'm going to do is actually import some functions from my own library bit by bit. As I said, most of these are ones that I've created myself over the years. But for what we're doing now, I'm going to grab one that's called concatenate. And concatenate is also a pretty simple one. When you come in here, I've added a bunch of comments here to show people how to use it if they download it or whatever. I'll take that out for now so we can focus on the function itself. Now, this first of all uses let. If you're not familiar with let sets a variable in that function. Normally, it's just going to stay in that function unless you do some special things we won't go into. But in this case, I've set if has both. I've got two values that I'm passing in. If it says not is empty value 1 and not is empty value 2. So if both of them are non-empty, does has both. So if it has both, then I've got a prefix I can declare, a suffix I can declare, and a delimiter that goes in the middle. So it's going to output the prefix, value 1, delimiter that can be in the middle, value 2, suffix. And this is just like our full name and last first, but it's a little more robust, shall we say. So let's put concatenate in here. And we'll do again, first name, last name. Our delimiter is going to be a space. Prefix will be the title. And we don't have suffix in this database, but let's say, for example, we had a suffix field and the suffix was junior. Let's just put that in as text. Now you see it comes in, but the custom function works exactly as expected. I didn't tell it to put a space after the prefix or a space before the suffix. So if I want to fix that, I have to go back in here and my title, I'll add a space to the end, and then I'll put a comma space before the junior. When I come out, it does exactly what I wanted. Okay, so this is still pretty simple. We're getting a little bigger. We've got a few more parameters here. But now here's something really cool that custom functions have been able to do for a long time. And we actually have simpler ways to do this now, but it's still a very powerful tool, and it's called recursion. Now, recursion basically means that you have some code that does something over and over and over again. The old saying goes, if you want to understand recursion, you first have to understand recursion, because it just goes in a loop like that. So I'm going to grab from my library another one that I created a long time ago. This one was probably back from 2004 when custom functions were first introduced. I believe that was the year. Repeat characters. I've imported one function. When we go in here, again, I'm going to go ahead and delete all this information at the top. You can see this is a pretty short function, but look at what it does. It calls itself. Function repeat characters says call repeat characters, but only if the recursions number is greater than 0. So we're going to specify two things, characters and recursions. So let's say we set the character of A and recursions is 5. So the first time through, it says if recursions is greater than 0, well, yeah, 5 is greater than 0. So put characters, which is A, and repeat characters. So again, A, recursions minus 1. So it does the same thing again, but now recursions is 4. And the third time it does it, recursions is 3, then 2, then 1, and then it's not greater than 0 anymore, so it stops. So let's go out here and let's see what this does. We're just going to keep using the same field so we don't have to keep moving things on. So repeat characters. And I'll put the letter A in there. And let's make our recursion 6, so it's a little different than what I just said. Come back out. And you get the letter A 6 times. Doesn't matter what number we put in there. That's the beauty of the recursion. I can put 20. And then when I come back out, boom, we've got 20 A's. And I can use that function over and over again. If I want that to be A's, that's fine. And let's just make a recursion 2. I'll duplicate it. And this time we'll make it BC 5. Come back out, and I'll add recursion 2 to our layout. And you can see it's repeated BC 5 times. So the same custom function can be used with different variables in the same layout in the same system all over the place. Now, another function that is built into FileMaker that is very useful is a function called trim. If you remember earlier, I said that there are easier ways to do the calculation with the full name. Originally, I had put it with if the last name is not empty, then we're going to do this. And if the first name's not empty, we're going to do this. Trim will allow us to just put a space between them, because what trim does is it takes off any spaces on either end of your calculation result. So if first name is empty, it gets rid of this space at the beginning of last name. If last name is empty, it gets rid of the space at the end of first name. That's all well and good. But a lot of times, especially when we're copying and pasting data or importing data coming from all sorts of different places, obviously there's data all over, you might have characters that are not just that space. You might have extra returns. You might have tabs. You might have non-printing characters that are way up in the Unicode system. So let's go in here, back to my library, SuperTrim. Now there are a lot of different versions of SuperTrim. This is one that I created myself. And you can see now we're starting to get pretty complex. In this one, I've actually used a fairly new function in FileMaker. This was introduced in 18 called while. And while allows us to not have to recurse the function over and over again. It just recurses things within itself. But what SuperTrim does is it looks for a whole bunch of characters. This code here is actually a list of a ton of different characters that you might not want at the beginning and end of your system. We've got these Unicode values, we've got function keys, we've got control characters. Any of that stuff can go in there. So if we take SuperTrim and let's imagine that we copied and pasted some really weird data in here. So I'm going to put some carriage returns there, and let's see, character. You remember what non-breaking space is, Mike?
I only know the HTML character and
Yeah.
non-breaking space. And
Okay, well, whatever. We'll just throw those in there. We'll put a tab at the end of the last name, etc. And then when we come back out, switch it back to full name. And all that weirdness at the ends is taken care of. And because I use the while function, it doesn't just do it once. It grabs the last character. If it's something it doesn't want, throws it out. Checks the next last character. If it's not what it wants, throws it out, etc. And then does the same with the first characters. I think you're starting to get the idea, I hope, you're starting to get the idea of how powerful these can be. But even with this power, a lot of times it's just really simple stuff. There are a lot of functions that I pull into almost every solution that I build, not because I just grab them and stick them in there at random at the beginning, although there have been times I've done that, but they're just so useful that I eventually start using them and I need to grab them from somewhere. So a good example of that, I've got some trim functions here. Trim at, trim between, trim from. Not even going to bother going into the code because it's simple enough to do. But let's say that we want to trim the first name. Sorry. At the letter B. Why not? We'll just pick a random one. And we're going to do it at the second occurrence of B. So now, let's see if we happen to have a Bobby in here. We don't, I'll just change it. Okay, cool. So let's put a Bobby in here. Trim at gives us Bo. It looks for that second B and cuts it off there. This can be really useful if you're trying to get a portion of a field. Same thing goes for trim from. So that would do the exact opposite. Trim from, first name B2. Now it gives us the BY. It gets rid of everything up to that second B. And then the third one, trim between. So now let's say that we want to trim everything between the first letter B and the third letter B. Again, just grabs everything after the first B and before the third. And the cool thing is you can even do this with recursion. These I don't use nearly as much, but trim values at, trim values between, trim values from. Same thing as the first three, but we're recursing them. So now if we do Bobby, they've got returns set to go to the next field in this. Let's turn that off. Bobby, Billy, Bertha, Oh, bum. Let's go in here and we'll do trim values from, and we'll do first name B1. Then we come up here. Got to make it, and I'm going to move it out of the top nav so we can see the whole thing. Put it on top of the photo that doesn't have any data in it anyway. Let's cut off that B in every line. Now, I've got a lot more than I can share, but let's pause for a minute. I think the question popped up earlier. Mike,
Yeah, so Thaleen asked, do you have a separate file that houses your library of custom functions? And I mean, so since custom functions can be easily copied and pasted between files, we may keep a library of custom functions somewhere, but normally we copy and paste into our app files for what we need. And a lot of custom functions that are out there as examples come as sets of custom functions. So there might be custom functions for working with JSON, for things that aren't included in FileMaker's native JSON functions. Like I use a couple of those for things like merging two parts of JSON together or things like that. Or there might be one for like the curl custom functions are another popular one for like dealing with APIs. And there might be 40 or 50 of custom functions in those files. So you don't want to really bring them all in all at the same time.
Most of the time, right.
Because then if you're doing a very simple file, you'll wind up with like 600 custom functions, and they don't take up a lot of space in your file, but they can lead to some confusion if you have multiples that are kind of named the same that might overlap with each other. So normally we don't have a single repository of custom functions, but we have specific demo files for certain tasks that we want to do that we copy and paste from. So
yeah, as you've seen, I actually do have a library of the custom functions that I've built over the years, and but as a group, Mainspring does not have a single library that we all share.
The other way custom functions can wind up in your files from add-ons, which we've talked about add-ons before, but add-ons will add custom functions to your file, and that can lead to some interesting behavior if it tries to import if the function already exists and it tries to import a function with the same name. It actually won't import it because it sees that function name is already there. So if those two custom functions don't do the same thing, you can wind up with issues, which is why, like, when we develop add-ons, we make sure all the custom functions we use have the add-on name to start with, so it doesn't overlap.
Exactly, because actually I have had that problem just recently. I had a custom function called JSON get element type, and then FileMaker added a function called JSON get element type, and thankfully they do the exact same thing. But it was
so yeah, there's no industry standard across the FileMaker community for naming your custom functions. So you'll see people that will prefix their custom functions with like CF underscore or just underscore, which is kind of a bad idea for a different reason. Or some people put their company name in front of it for some reason when they're sharing it out there. Like it's a little bit of Wild West of naming convention, but normally I like descriptive things that are just the name of what it does. Like I try not to use too many special characters in the function names to keep it easy.
Yeah.
All right. So we got another custom function with Dan. It says, I'm having trouble with curl when I create an insert from URL. I get a different reaction from the APIs from the same curl command in terminal. Which function might help with that? Not a function, but let me look something up. I have a demo file that will help you. It's not really a custom function, but I gave a presentation earlier this week, halfway around the world. And part of that was a demo file that was converting curl. I need to find it though. So give me a minute to find that. I'll respond in the chat, Dan.
Sure.
Jeff, you can keep going.
Sounds great. And we do have some curl custom functions that we kind of pass around among our group, but there are so many of them because there are so many possibilities for what you can do.
Yeah, curl has so many custom functions. So
yeah.
Yeah, so the library that's out there, which Wim DeCourt from Soliant wrote, has something like 120 functions in it. So
yeah.
But I'll answer this if you want to keep going.
All right, sounds great. All right, so let's talk about a few other fun things that I've come up with. Sorry. Here's one that we've found is very helpful, is valid email format. You'd be amazed at how complex the criteria for what constitutes a valid email address are. You'd think that you couldn't have an @ sign in your actual email address. You can. In addition to the @ sign between you and the domain, you can also have another @ sign in your actual name, but it has to be in quotes in the name. There are characters that can only be used if there's a backslash before them. There are characters that can only be used. I don't know. There are just so many different functions, but you can see how complex this system is. But the beauty is we can put that custom function on that email address. So let's go to the address field here, and we're going to do something a little different this time. We'll go into validation and click on validated by calculation. I'll just do is valid email format self. The self function just applies to whatever it's attached to. And we can display a custom message. In fact, in my is valid email format, I have a recommended custom message. So let's go back into email addresses. And we'll put that message in there. Come back out. And I'll say BobbyCohey.com. And of course, I am going too fast and did something wrong in here. Honestly, though, I'm not sure what. You know what? I'll bet it is. This is something you really have to watch out for. And I was going to bring this up later, but I think I fell victim to my own mistake. Doesn't look like it, but let me say yeah, it is what I thought it was. With custom functions, they're not going to work if you're missing another custom function that it calls. Because once you put a custom function in your solution, you can use that custom function in another custom function. And I put it right here in my notes that this one requires a function called odd characters. So that's not going to work unless I have odd characters. So I'm going to go ahead back to the import, and I'll find is valid email format, and go for odd characters. It also requires repeat characters, but we've already got that in there. So now we've got it. And looks all good. It's not commented out. My field is going to be broken though. because I just added a new custom function to the system, deleted the old one and added a new one. Even though it has the same name, it's still going to say function missing. So let's put that in there. And here's hoping it works this time. Of course not. Well, you know what? This is why we test. And I didn't test this right before. Let's see if I can get it to fail. There we go. So yeah, that obviously is not a valid email address. That is, it likes that. I really have no idea why it likes that one, but guess I'll have to go back and figure that out. Something broke somewhere along the way. Okay, let's go with something that I know works. I actually created a function that does the same thing as one that one of our other developers, Ryan, asked us to use in here. I created one called remove values. I had an earlier one called remove value, but I don't really use that anymore because remove values will do everything that does and more. Let's come in here, make sure everything looks good. It's all self-contained, no other custom functions that it relies on. So let's take this list here that we've created. That's the result field. And now let's create another field, result 2. And we're going to say remove values. We'll start with the result field, and then we'll put in a return delimited list of values we want to take out. So we'll say Abhi, return, Eartha. You can guess what this is going to do. Let's move result over a little bit. Result 2 in there.
Jeff, I forget this all the time. What's the shortcut key for Pilcrow? Not to put you on the spot.
The option 7.
Option 7. There's
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Pilcrow is the line break for people that don't recognize the character name. It's funny that I know the name, but not the shortcut key.
Here's another fun one. I use this a lot. It's called item list. So let's grab item list. And here's one that is recursive. We're going to grab, let me put the whole thing in here so you can see the parameters it takes. It takes a value list and an optional maximum number of characters. So we're going to, let's not even do result. Let's do first name because I've got a bunch of info in there. And let's say that the max characters is 50. This is really nice for a list view, especially. You'll see what it does is it adds commas after each value in this list and an and before the last one. If we only have 2 values, it just does the and. Let's try to get to more than 50 characters, though. Let's keep going. And we can just keep going over and over and over again. It's now too long, longer than 50 characters. So it figures out how many it can put in there, plus and the number more, and still be within 50 characters. So again, recursion, and it'll give you a really nice list that you can, or yeah, item list that you can put in a list view, so you can see the values that you would see in details. Just simplified. Let's see, 141. We still got some time.
A little bit, yeah.
Yep. Let's add a couple of dates in here, because this is something that I've found a lot of companies also need. We'll do a date start and a date end. Now, most people know that with FileMaker, you can do math with your dates. So let's pull these in here, put the date start above the date end. And of course, I forgot to put them on the right side, anchor them to the right. We'll put, I don't know, 6/3/2015, and we'll put today's date. So math, pretty simple. Date diff. Make it a calculation, and we'll put date end minus date start. And that will give you the number of days between start and end, obviously. 3,088. Very nice. But how many business days is that? Well, we're going to have to go in and get a custom function for that one. Let's go here. Business days math, business days between. Let me make sure that it doesn't require anything I'm missing. Oh, yep, I'm missing one. We also need his business holiday. So okay, good. So now let's do business diff. And I really hope that this one works, because it's been a long time since I touched it. Timestamp start. So it's looking for a timestamp. Let's go for the start date, and we'll say time 12:00. Timestamp end. This is the date end. Put that in a timestamp as well. And it's got a cutoff time, because it might happen after hours. And exclude holidays, we'll set that to true. Here we go. I know this worked the last time I saw it. Hope it works this time too. No. Gives us a 0. Well, I'm not sure why it's not working, but making a fool of myself twice. Gotta love it. Let's
Kind of
try
funny. I just returned from a developers conference, and there's like a curse of presenting and trying to do coding live for
yeah, exactly.
I had a demo that did dictation, but when you plug in your laptop to the projector, it disabled all of your microphones. So none of the dictation functions work. But yeah.
Here's
Part of the
one
learning process.
Yes,
So
it
while you're
absolutely is.
debugging that, I posted a link to a blog post from one of the Kevin Frank's blog that I follow. It's called FileMakerHacks.com. Pretty popular. They've got some very extensive things in there. But around the end of last year, he did a 3-part series of JSON custom functions, just a bunch of custom functions for dealing with JSON and expanding on like JSON set element and JSON get element. And, the more and more as like a FileMaker developer, if you don't already know how to work with JSON, it's like it should really be on your to-do list of things to learn like immediately going forward. Because as more and more things progress and as FileMaker extends more out into other spaces, that's the language it's gonna be going in is JSON.
Yep. Okay, so the one I just added and checked it on another screen, so I know this one works. Added a function, you may have noticed me putting it in there, called Easter. This is the calculation for when Easter is. Can't think of any other holiday that has such a ridiculously complex calculation. But here it is. So if we type in any year, say, when was Easter in 1998? April 12th. When is it this year? April 9th, etc. So again, something you're probably not going to need a lot, but I actually needed it for a system once, and that's why it exists. Another one that I've created is called Distinct, which is just like FileMaker's unique values, which came later. Unique values will give you exactly one of each value in a return delimited list, but it includes a return at the end, just like all of the values functions, which is fine. That's expected behavior, but Distinct doesn't have that. So I still use Distinct more than unique values. And I see that, not sure which Michael shared that, but we just got a link to Brian Dunning's custom function site. I was going to mention that at the end.
Yeah. Oh, it also appears that FM functions is offline.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything there in a while. But yeah, Brian Dunning has an amazing site for FileMaker custom functions. Okay, well, let's do one last thing because we're just about out of time. And this is one that I'm just going to pull up my library file for because, again, I know it works. This would be a function that actually calls 2 other functions. Way back when, this is going back almost 20 years, I decided to challenge myself. There are plenty of, plenty of functions out there that will take numbers and convert them to words. But most of them go up to the millions, maybe they'll go to the billions. I challenged myself to create a function that would go to the indexable limits of FileMaker, which is 10 to the 400 and 10 to the negative 400, plus and minus 0. So what I've got here is a number field and a number text field. And in this number text field, all it is number to words, number. That's the whole calculation. But when I type in this number, it tells me exactly what that number is in words. Go into the function. These are all my custom functions I've stuck in this library. You can see it's got quite a bit in here, but it also comes down to the end and calls numbered words underscore, numbered words double underscore. So once it comes in here and grabs this data, once it comes in here and grabs this data. And by putting all that together, we can not only put this together, but then we can add decimals. So it's got that huge number and 23,448 hundred thousandths. Or minus there, negative 413 due of a gentillion, etc. Again, these things can be really powerful. They can do all sorts of things that FileMaker cannot do out of the box. Really, the only limit is pretty much your imagination. And one last thing, a neat thing that I picked up along the way. Custom functions can also be extremely simple, so you don't have to remember things. Like I asked Mike earlier what the 0 with space character is. If I were using this file, I wouldn't have to remember it because I have k underscore 0 with space. It tells me it's character 65279. So if I need a 0 with space, I just stick that in my function. If I need a tab, I can put it in there. Escape character, I can check for escapes. You can even put your company email address in a custom function and then stick it in all your scripts. That way, if you want to change it to a different email address, you just change the custom function and all your scripts get updated all at once. Or your phone number or whatever. They can be really simple, really complex, anywhere in between. So that's all I've got for now. Back to you, Mike.
All right. Well, couple things. Do you have a tip of the day?
Actually, I guess I do have a tip of the day. Let me share one more time. It's really nice that you can do all this in the calculations, but now in FileMaker 20.2, we have a new ability.
Layout calculations.
Yes, layout calculation. So you can take anything you want to take. Let's say, put a $sign at the beginning of the number and round it, if I can spell round, to. And obviously that's going to be a gigantic number right now. So. There we go.
Like 5 decimal. Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So we no longer have to create calculation fields, but it would be my recommendation that these be used sparingly. I have not stuck a lot of them on a layout, but I would imagine that it would bog you down pretty quickly if you put a lot of them on there.
It depends on how you use it. Obviously, the key factor to think there is you don't need a calculation field in your database in order to use a calculation field anymore and display it on a screen. So you can stick that merge field in a list view and it will show up on every record. You can use it to like put a count of the portal records above because you can use things like the sum function in there. So there's a lot of single use calculations, so to speak, that a lot of developers clog up their database with, and that would be a cool thing to start to integrate. So exactly. There's people already starting to roll that out, but of course, if you funny story, if you put that in your database and somebody with like 19.6 connects to it, they just see the calculation text because there's no it doesn't process the merge and it doesn't process the text. So it's a 20.2 feature, which is also why it's important to keep your FileMaker up to date.
Exactly.
All right. Little bit of housekeeping. Thanksgiving is next week. We've got a big server update window on the way. So if anybody wants to get their FileMaker server updated to the latest version, 20.2 or 2023.2, I guess they call it. We'll be doing those updates the Friday after Thanksgiving. So we'll be hard at work when everybody else is still recovering and, raiding their local store for Black Friday. We don't have a topic already picked for next month, but we do have a laundry list of topics thanks to my most recent presentation at a roadshow that I did. So we'll probably have topics selected, but if you still have a topic or if you want help with learning how to use FileMaker functions, one-on-one training, anything really, just hit us up at answers@gomainspring.com. It's our service desk, and we can get you connected and let you know how we can help. Dan asked if calculations work on the web. Yes, they do, since as long as you're using server 2023.2.
Exactly.
So again, if you have like server 19 and you're editing your layout with 2023.2 and you put a layout calculation on, it won't work unless your server is your server hosts WebDirect, so it needs 2023.2 as well, but it will work if you have that for WebDirect. Sizing might be a little weird too, so keep that in mind. What your result's gonna look like. All right, so I think that's all we have. Jeff, anything else?
Nope, that's good for me. Just for those of you in the US, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And
we'll see. We'll see how we work around the Christmas schedule for next month. But
yeah, exactly.
I think we'll still probably meet. I think Christmas is at the end of the week, so we might do a Christmas themed office hours. Who knows?
I think it's a Monday, actually.
It's the Monday. Yeah, so we might do the third Thursday, because that would be like around the 18th or whatever. All right. Yeah. So keep everyone in touch. Watch out on your mailing list, and thanks everyone for joining us today.